In this video, I will be playing a game against a 2088 rated opponent, and I will be playing the Scandinavian defense, which is my favorite opening to play with black. I always play the Valencian variation, which is when we play the queen back to the 8. So during this game, I'm going to show you why I like this opening so much and how you should play it. And of course, more importantly, we are going to try to win this game so that we can reach 2200 rating. So we go back with the queen. Whenever they move the d pawn, we move the knight. Doesn't matter if it's d3 or d4, we move the knight. And whenever they move the knight, we move the bishop. Also doesn't matter if it's f3 or e2. Those pieces are linked to each other. So the pawn with the knight and the bishop with the knight, the pawn with our knight and their knight with our bishop. All right, bishop c4. Let's block the diagonal for the bishop, and this move is the most commonly played move in that position for white, but it's actually a slight inaccuracy, since the bishop doesn't really belong there. They castle, and we are going to play c6 as a waiting move, but also because we want to control these two squares. And now it's more obvious why this bishop and actually this knight are both misplayed. Rook e1 is always interesting since they pin this pawn to the king, but we can just simply block the pin with bishop to e7. And then we want to play knight to d7 and we want to castle. And that is basically the opening move order. Sometimes if they don't play rook e1, let's say they had played bishop f4 instead, we would have actually challenged their bishop, at least that's what I would have done, and gone for a trade. And this move order, it's not really possible since we already blocked with the bishop there. Okay, and now they go for this knight h4 idea, which is an incredibly common move that they play, but it's actually also a slight inaccuracy. This move only works if h3 is already on the board, because now they are allowing us to go to this g4 square, and this is quite annoying for white to deal with, because the queen's under attack, this knight is also on the edge of the board, it's not really doing well, and then they usually play f3 out of pure frustration, trying to do something, but it's actually not such a great move because we can just drop back. And now the question is really, do you want to play the move pawn to g4? Because this is going to get quite tactical. I think you can already see that there might be a variation where we sacrifice a piece and then suddenly the bishop and the queen open up, and also this rook on e1 is now misplaced as well because we would be winning that rook. And if they don't play the g4 push, oops, my lichess was lagging there, or it's still lagging for a moment. If they don't play the g4 push, then this knight is actually stuck because it doesn't have a single square. So it's actually a perfect example. This is also in my chess course on the Scandinavian defense. This is just a very typical way. White plays all the logical moves, but they are not in a good position. This is not a good position for white. So I'm curious. I think they are probably calculating this g4 push. The only problem is I usually forget when we can exactly play this, so I might need to calculate this instead of just playing this on memorization, which is not good. I should memorize this a bit more. But I think g4, we take with the knight, and they take with the pawn. So basically we sacrifice a knight for a pawn, but we immediately win back a piece. So we are up a pawn, and we also have an attack on the rook, and in case they take our bishop, we take the rook. So I think that's it, yeah. And in the end, there's actually also queen takes d4 with a check, picking up the bishop. So this is the exact position where the trap is possible. If the rook is on f1, it's different. If the rook is on f1, it's different, because after we do this, and we sacrifice, and we take the knight, and they take our bishop, there's actually no capture on e1. And then we have lost those two pieces, basically. Since we have sacrificed the knight and the bishop, we only won this. So we lose two pieces, we only gain one. But with the rook on e1, this g4 move doesn't work. And I think that's what they are calculating, probably, that g4, but usually they just play it instantly and they fall for the trap. Here they are calculating, but it doesn't work. And they realize that it doesn't work, and they play queen here, which I think is also a blunder, because we have the move queen takes d4 with a check, and that also attacks the bishop. If the bishop blocks, we pick up the knight. If the queen blocks, we pick up the bishop. So they are actually just completely fumbling the game here. I think just queen takes d4, and this is going to be a very easy win. Take with a check, that's the second problem. They oftentimes forget that this pawn is hanging now that they have moved the knight. That's another problem. So we take this, and I think we are winning in every variation, right? If bishop moves, we take the knight. If queen moves, we take the bishop. And if queen blocks, yeah, we take the bishop. I forgot my train of thought there. If bishop blocks, we take the knight. And if the king moves, that was the final one I wanted to say. If the king moves, we just capture on f4. And now it's becoming very clear that white has completely messed up the opening by playing the most natural looking move, this knight h4 move, and then the combination with that f3 move. But it just doesn't work. Knight is trapped, queen here. And even if they had played a different move, we always have this move h6 and then g5, forking both pieces. The knight is still stuck, actually. The knight is still stuck. So white is just in massive trouble. And I don't know, are we going to have to play out this game, or are they going to resign? I mean, for the sake of the video, it's best if they play out this game. Otherwise, this is going to be a very short one. But I think they are just completely lost. Might take them some time to realize it here. Yeah, I think this is going great. Always keep an eye on this d4 pawn, by the way. There are many sequences where you could also trade bishops, force them to take with a queen or something, and then sometimes d4 or c2, really, those two pawns. We pick those up quite easily. So they do want to continue playing, and they play bishop e3, which I think just gives up the knight. And that looks... We just have to watch out we don't get trapped or something, but I think we just got a knight here. And it's not just a knight, we also have some counterplay. I mean we have some attack, not counterplay since we're winning, but we have some attack. Maybe we can attack h2 this way. We have the knight, queen, bishop, and maybe this bishop all aiming at the king. And the most important defender, which is this knight on f3, is actually gone. So I like this position. I like this position quite a lot. Okay, so they are deciding to play it recklessly. Bishop takes e6. Bishop takes e6. Which basically gives us more material. We got a bishop for a pawn. Bishop takes e6. But I do understand why. There is sometimes a tactic with the e6 pawn, but not in this game, I think. Don't we just take this? What's going on here? We take this, and then what is their plan? Maybe bishop to f2? And then the queen is attacked, and after we move the queen, they are taking with their queen on e6, which is a check, and then they pick up the bishop, and then it leads to a massive trade potentially. So that's something. So I think that's their plan. At the same time, I'm not worried too much because it's just a trade. It's just a trade, I think. A trade in which they might win a pawn, but I don't think it's going to be enough since we're literally up a full piece. So I think it's a creative way. Oftentimes e6 is a square where there are sacrifices. It's a very creative way for them to try to win a pawn. But does the pawn really matter since they are losing? Bishop c5 sadly doesn't work, so we just have to move the queen here, I guess. We have to move the queen, and we need to pick a safe square. And after whatever we do, they will play queen e6 with a check, and then they will try to pick up the bishop for free. But I thought I had the move queen to b4, which is going to make sure we don't just lose a piece. It's going to protect the bishop. It's very interesting, this sequence that they are trying, but I don't think it really gains them anything. Except a pawn, of course. Well, actually, they gain a pawn, but they gave me a full bishop, right? So yeah, they would have to capture here. It's the only thing they can do. Okay, so I guess we block, and now really they have to take. They have to take. If they don't take this, then they are just down even more, which leads to an exchange, and this is actually good for us. We did lose a pawn. We did lose a pawn, yes, but I mean, we are still up a piece, and all these exchanges are really good for us. Since we are just straight up winning, I'm looking for exchanges, but I don't want to give any more material to my opponent. So I think I might need to play pawn b6. I think I might need to play pawn b6. The only thing we need to do, it's actually quite simple, is we need to trade. We just need to trade. If I can get some trades on the board, I win this game easily. And knight d5 looks like a beautiful move, since it's a fork, which is basically a forced trade. And then I need to activate this knight as well. Okay, they double the rooks, which makes sense, but I think we have knight d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. The doubled rooks don't really mean anything. And then we still have knight to a6, and then we can connect our rooks. So I like this. It might actually, positionally speaking, maybe not be the correct move, because we do give white quite some piece activity, but positional concepts don't really matter as much when you are just straight up winning. So I'm actually very happy with this game. Like, this was purely a line from my opening course, which we just win. Usually they play g4 and it's more spectacular, but here we also win. So this was a good game so far. Now I just have to teach you how to win endgames like this, which is not super complex. We basically have to trade, as I said, trade, trade, trade. The more we trade, the easier it will become. And make sure that we don't blunder, and also that we don't give them any fancy counterplay or whatever. So I think this is good. Knight a6 attacks the rook. They are trying to go for the infiltration with two rooks on the 7th rank, but it will never work because we always have this move rook to f7, which is protected by the bishop and the king. Yeah. So let's have a look. I think we actually just have another forced trade. Isn't just rook f7? Rook f7 is interesting. We have to watch out as well for dark squares. Keep this in mind. They have a dark squared bishop. We don't want to run into dark squared problems. But this looks good. They might just play here, but... By the way, this pawn is probably poisoned in case you're thinking about capturing it. They play b3 and we're in trouble. Knight c5 I don't like that we double the pawns. So I think this will be my move. Yeah. And also, as I said, we need to remember light squares, light squares. We want everything on light squares. As long as we have everything on light squares, we are guaranteed that we don't have any problems. Okay, doesn't matter. This is just a rook trade. And there's nothing they can do. Although I have to watch out always for this move bishop to d4, which is somewhat annoying since we could have this dark square problem. But let's take the trade and let's make sure we don't blunder here. So what's the best sequence? I wish I could trade rooks, but it doesn't really work since we would lose this pawn, and I can't propose a trade. So I need to control this square. We don't want dark squared problems. Also, since our opponent has the dark squared bishop, it actually does make sense for us to just put pawns on the dark squares. Because the more pawns that we have on the dark squares, the more, well, the less squares this bishop is going to have, because we control more of them. And also our light squared bishop is happier if there are no light squared pawns, since it can literally just move in between the pawns. All right. So it's quite obvious what they are trying, right? They want to try this, and then they want to try for a windmill tactic. The question is, can we actually stop them? I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can. It's a bit annoying, right, really. Because if I move my rook, I'm always just dropping this pawn, which is annoying. Maybe just bishop f7 could actually work. Yeah, bishop f7 might work, because at least it disconnects this rook. But now my knight is somewhat trapped. Well, not really, I think. We have b4, and we actually have b8 as well, since the rook can't really do anything. Yeah, I think this was a good move, bishop f7. So this also is a good example of how I play whenever I am winning. Whenever I am winning, I actually try to imagine for a moment that I am my opponent and that I am looking for counterplay. So then I noticed, okay, they have a dark squared bishop, so dark squares are important. They have actively placed rooks, which means all pawns on the 7th rank are actually weaknesses, potential targets. And then I noticed that they could potentially set up a windmill-like tactic. Probably was never really a windmill, but you know what I mean, right? If the bishop and the rook team up on that pawn, we could be in trouble. But now by playing it in this way, I think we are just perfectly fine. I just need to get this knight into the game because it's really a horrible piece. A very horrible piece. But I think I just have knight b8, knight c6, and life is great. I think this should be fine. Usually you never want to make a move like this because there could be just simply rook e8, and then, yeah, that's horrible since your knight is stuck. But it doesn't work. That bishop f7 move, I think, was a really good move. Okay. So they are actually doing their very best to make that knight useless. It's interesting. How are we going to activate this knight? How are we going to activate this knight? It's not so easy. Maybe we play... No, we can't play b5. I could play knight back to a6, but we are just going to repeat. I think I might actually go for that. Like moving the bishop, I don't like it. Yeah, maybe this was a move I didn't, I underestimated this basically. This is an interesting one. Okay. So I think I could also just move the pawn, and then we have the c5 square. Yeah. I'm always just very careful. You don't want to lose games like this when you are just up a free piece, so you need to be careful. But this looks fine. We are connecting the pawn with the bishop. We give our knight a possible square. Maybe they'll play bishop here, but we'll see. I mean, as soon as this knight is in the game, it will be very clear that we are winning. As long as they can keep the knight out of the game, it's questionable. Like, yeah, we have an extra piece, but if it's not doing anything, then does it really matter that we have an extra piece? It does, because we will make it work for us. But keep that in mind. If you have extra material, but it's quite passive, you don't really have an advantage there. So light squares is still the strategy. So knight c5, I don't like the dark square on c5, but I might use it as a temporary home. Of course, a knight always switches colors, right? If it's currently on light squares, next move it will be on dark. But from there, we have access to a bunch of light squares. And that's really what I'm looking forward to, especially a4 could be great. Attacking this, or also maybe e6 could actually be great. We are somewhat trapping that rook. And then we can see from there. Opponent is taking quite a long time. I mean, you're just losing at this point, but okay. Rook e8, by the way, is a move that I always want to play this, but of course, remember, doesn't come with a back rank mate for two reasons, the bishop and the pawn, and it also just drops h7, but would be a good way of proposing a trade. Oh, say they do play this. I actually thought that this was potentially a bad move. Let me think here for a moment. I think I have rook d8. Rook d8, if they want to, they can take the pawn and we take the bishop and they take the knight. So they have a little bit more compensation, but we get an exchange going and a rook infiltration. So I think this is a move that we can play. I do have to watch out, actually. That we run into back rank issues because of our bishop placement, so I don't think it works. I don't think it actually works. I think this would actually be a blunder if we play this move. Because in the end, after they check us, we have back rank issues. So I might need to poke a light squared hole first. But I feel like my opponent is putting up a great fight, especially considering that they are just down a full piece. I haven't really felt like I have been at material so far. So I think that was an interesting tactic. Unless if I obviously missed if I missed something very obvious there, then okay. But I think that was a good tactic, that sacrifice. Whenever you play Scandinavian, by the way, always watch out with that sacrifice. Here it wins them a pawn, but it doesn't matter since we are already winning the game. But you don't want that to happen if it's still equal material. Okay. Okay. So what's the plan? Can we just play Rook D8? Um. Well, it doesn't. That never really gains us anything. Hmm. It's still annoying, this position. Really annoying. Maybe I just have to play that knight c5 move. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just do this. Like there might be something better, but we need to do something, and otherwise this knight is never going to do anything. The pawns are not beautiful, but yeah, rook here, that was to be expected, but I think we have rook here. That was what I calculated. And if they push, we win pawns. If they don't push, we win pawns. We win pawns, basically. Maybe I should have actually just played knight c5 five times over already, and I've been making this too complex, but you don't really want to, like, you don't want to give your opponent compensation. Like, we already gave them a pawn, now we also have doubled pawns. All of these things are slowly stacking up and building them some compensation for the fact that they have one less piece. Is it going to be enough? I don't think so. But you don't really want to give them more than you need to. Otherwise, yeah, you're just making it more complex for yourself. What do you want? You want to pick up that pawn, but I'm going to have a passed pawn, right? Confusing. I think I do this. You can never move your rook, and I just push my pawn up. I think we are just straight up winning this now. Okay. Push. Yeah, this should be easy. Um, hmm. Should be. Push. Okay. Yeah. They cannot capture this, and if we get to play the check, we win. And if they move the king here, we also win because we promote, and that is a check. So with that being said, hope you really enjoyed this game. We had to really fight for those points, but we gained 7 elo points with this game, which is great. Hope you enjoyed this. See you in the next one.